Yes, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of Ageless Living, Creative Wellness and the Art of Alignment. It is such a pleasure to share more life, more vibes with y'all. So let's start by doing one of the most important things that we can do as breathing sentient beings. Well, I gave it away, breathing. So just checking in with your posture, checking in with this moment right now, allowing every thought that is clouding the mind to dissipate as we align ourselves with this life force, this sekhem, the breath. Taking a deep inhale, holding for a moment, and another sip of air in at the top, and letting it go. Plugging our left nostril with our left index finger. Deep breath in. And breathing out through the right. Deep breath in. And breathing out. One more deep breath in. Breathing out. Switching over to the other side, plugging that right nostril. Deep breath in. Breathing out. Deep breath in. Fill up that belly. Breathing out. And one more. Let it go. And breathing in through both. Holding. And letting it go. Holding all of the air out of the body for a moment. And deep breath in. Returning to your normal cadence, your supernatural cadence. And once again, welcome back. It is such an honor and a pleasure to just have your presence. It's a gift, so I give thanks. We're going to start by, just giving a little overview of what we're going into today and exploring this idea, this concept of humility. A lot of people, especially in Kemetic culture, have an issue. I don't even want to say Kemetic culture, just spiritual, aware, conscious beings have this issue with the idea of being humble. We realize that in vocabulary, there can be this limiting aspect, especially in the English language, when it comes to this idea of lowering ourselves, or the concept of humility to represent meekness or being under than, or to even just be passive. And I think what Ma'at is really teaching is balance, right? So obviously we want the scales to be in full alignment, in full harmony. And instead of recognizing humility as a tool to just sit in, or even the idea of being braggadocious or ego driven or just full of yourself as something to sit in, it's finding the balance and being able to feel out the temperature and adjust the thermostat based off of the moment. What is the moment calling for? And I think it's very important, because as we become more aware and more full of ourself in terms of our divine reasoning or our divine purpose on this planet, we also have to remember that everyone else around us has a divine purpose as well. And so being able to move in a certain level of grace, in a manner of recognizing the divinity within everybody else, is also to recognize the humanity within yourself, and sometimes how we may fall short based off of just the way we communicate and interact with one another, but also the way that we may communicate with ourselves. So we're going to get into the next affirmations that go with the negative confessions number 9, 10, and 11. So we really want to be clear that these affirmations, and just like, the ideals of Ma'at that have already been listed by some other folks, are really to understand this law of opposites, right? The opposing forces. So the next affirmation is I and I speak with reverence. And reverence is to oppose malice or careless words, curses, really, right? So when we're speaking with reverence, it's really honoring just the sacredness of not only the things we're speaking about, but just even our ability to connect mind to verb, to word, right? So I and I speak with reverence. The next one to go with law 10, I and I honor commitment. Now, this goes to commitments, whether it's somebody else's commitment. So if let's say, because the law states, I will not commit adultery. So maybe it's even to someone's commitment with their partner, and it's like, you know what, I'm going to honor that these two people are intertwined and intermingled. But it's also commitments on a deeper level to me. Like, I always want to take this deeper because I felt like our Kemetic ancestors were always just so poetic. So when we're honoring whatever commitment or whatever marriage that we may form with a person, a thing, or maybe another person does, there's a certain way of moving, of navigating through that to just honor that. And, the opposing force would be like betrayal or disloyalty. And so when we talk about commitment, we could see it in friendships, of course. We can see it in responsibility. There's so many ways that we can just explore this concept of commitment, that I think it's important for us to really make sure that we are operating from a place of trust, right? So it could be romantic bonds. It could also be with spiritual agreements, but also in our communal containers and within community. How we honor commitment, how we commit to the tasks that we have, whether that even be a job. It's definitely an important concept, and I believe a very valuable principle in living a more ma'atic life. Then we have number 11. I and I act with compassion and care. And this is opposing cruelty or indifference, right? So when we say I and I act with compassion and care, we're really also looking at the opposing law. I have not caused anyone to weep. So to be able to say, you know what, like, I see the light in you, I see the life in you, I see the God in you, the divine in you. It's to really make sure that we're honoring that sacred code of life, of breath, to be able to have a certain level of respect and compassion towards one another. So I feel like this goes right into the next teaching of Ptahhotep, right? And let me just read it for y'all, and then we're going to go over it. But I just want to definitely say that this one has been controversial for some. This is the instruction number 7. And I think I want to break it down because when we were talking on the call, on the detox call, this one definitely ruffles some feathers. And I recognize where that could be coming from, right? Because there's always this tendency to like almost big ourselves up, which is why a big theme in this specific episode is about humility. So of course, the idea of lowering ourselves feels daunting, especially for people who have been always told you may not be good enough, you're not great, and may not even sit in your own greatness, right? So there's a lot of different ways that we're going to break this down. But especially speaking on humility in a space of power and how we can release entitlement and be able to receive without feeling like things are owed to us. So I'm going to read this real quick. If you are one among guests at a table of a person who is more powerful than you, Take what that person gives just as it is set before you. Look at what is before you. Don't stare at your host. Don't speak to him until he asks. One does not know what may displease him. Speak when he has spoken to you. Then your words will please the heart. The man who has plenty of the means of existence acts as his Ka commands. He will give food to those who he favors. It is the Ka that makes his hand stretch out. The great man guides to the chosen man. Thus eating is under the direction of God. It is a fool who complains about it. So for those of you who don't know, even Ka is symbolized with outstretched hands, in Kemet. And before I get too deep into that, let's get to that part. We're going to break all this down, right? So starting at the beginning, right? So being a guest at somebody's table who's more powerful than you, this could go back into workplace, institutions, even a mentor, right? And which definitely relates to me the most, because I could definitely see myself in positions of menteeship where I've exercised this in a not so great way, right? But having the awareness, right? Not about shrinking, just recognizing that, okay, you are among a teacher, you are among a superior, maybe a boss, maybe somebody who is just really giving you something. And even if in the metaphor, even if, let's just say we're at a dinner and it's a host at a dinner party, right? The idea of do not stare. It's almost like demanding, almost wanting something before it's granted to you. And it goes back to the idea of speaking too soon, where it's I'm feeling entitled. So reverence includes this idea of knowing when not to speak, right? So when I say I and I speak with reverence, it's also making sure that, we are honoring sacred space, and not just space in terms of where we are physically, but the space in terms of the sound that we are creating, or sometimes not creating in this case, right? So it really involves timing, knowing when it's the best time to speak. Because when you speak when you're spoken to, kind of as it's going in, when you speak when spoken to and almost acknowledge, your words will please the heart, as opposed to moving in a way where it's yo, I gotta make myself seen. I gotta make myself known. Silence can be, the most powerful and most ethical thing. It shows that you are listening as well. And as they say, 2 ears, 1 mouth. And yeah, so now talking about Ka as a distributor, right? It is the Ka that makes his hand stretch out. That's a bar, because once again, Ka represents the hands up. The man who has plenty of means of existence acts as his Ka commands. So our Ka can be seen as almost like our divine allocation, our destiny, our almost like the energy that is emitting through us, the life force that's emitting through us, that's allowing us to do things, right? So I think that in this, it's really talking about how we really trust that when people who maybe are at a foundation where they are calling in a certain amount of energy to the point where they can give, I think that they have a certain level of awareness in terms of allocation, right? And so in acting as your Ka commands, it's almost like when you're operating in divine order, the provision flows through through a certain lens of clarity. And therefore, I think people who are in a certain position to give sometimes are skeptical of those who maybe are speaking too soon, or maybe like, even if we take like the literal idea of like, yo, this person's like staring at me, like they're watching me in a certain way. So even getting down to the idea of the complaints, right? Like it's a fool who complains about it. It's really talking about somebody who is not only disrupting a flow based off of them feeling like they deserve something and this idea of entitlement, but now they are operating out of a place of a lack of gratitude. And it really does connect to what we were saying, like I act with compassion and care, that 11th affirmation, because now you're building, you're moving with a certain level of resentment, which is only going to breed more resentment. So recognizing compassion includes patience. Now, this was a difficult one for people to digest, because it's almost like the idea of like, speak when you're spoken to. Don't speak to him until he asks. Like, these ideas definitely cause a stir in the detox group. And I just want to be clear, like when you are in somebody's home, or when you are literally sitting under the tutelage of somebody, when someone is setting a table, a foundation for you, we have to be mindful of how we move. And yes, it's not to say that like, let's dismiss our own power. But if you're not being abused, there's nothing to defend, right? Actually, you are being fed. You are being given sustenance. You are being given a certain level of care. And there's a certain level of compassion that's saying, yo, somebody got these blessings and they're willing to share with me. We have to be very mindful of how we speak, and mindful of how we may come off as if we deserve something, or as if we're entitled, as opposed to being like, you know what, being in a place of gratitude. Let me also make sure that this host, this person who is like seeing me and receiving me, let me be a great listener. Let me be somebody who is very patient, and let me not disrupt the flow based off of my ego, based off of me thinking that, yo, I gotta like move in a certain way to now boost myself up. So humility doesn't always look like, oh, I just have to play the lower position. Humility looks like recognizing where you are so that there can be balance. It's not about being egoically driven and so braggadocious and whatnot, but it's also not about humbling yourself to the grave. It's about finding the balance and finding the moments, being clear of what is being received, what is being given. So the idea of this detox in general, like once again, like we're detoxing from these ideas and these cultural beliefs that we have to hold on to, like, oh, don't be humble. No, there's certain times where we do have to humble ourselves, especially if we're operating from a place of like, I got this, I got that, I'm always right. Because there's always going to be a moment, and there's always going to be an environment where we must practice patience, we must practice listening, but we must also say, yo, I'm so grateful to be amongst somebody. Like, I could only imagine, like, if I had the opportunity, for example, to sit at the feet of Stevie Wonder, right? What I got to tell Stevie Wonder. You know what I'm saying? I want to like soak up as much information as possible. I want to be a good listener. I want to be a good student, because he could show me something on the piano, and unless he asked me, yo, show me something that you just did on the piano, I ain't gonna feel like I need to teach Stevie Wonder a damn thing. You know what I'm saying? So in that same regard, we just have to recognize where we are and who we're around. For example, like my employers, if they're employing me, if they're signing my paycheck, like they are providing a space and an opportunity for people to get paid. And hopefully, if this resonates with you, hopefully you have a job that you like, right? But let's always be mindful of the positions that we're playing, because even if we do want to be in the position of a boss one day, for example, the best thing you can do is not challenge the boss. It's to learn from the boss. It's to recognize that, yo, this person got something so deep, so divine going on, and I like it. Let me sit down and let me listen. Let me ask questions. And let me just also be in a place of like, all right, like I'm in flow here and I'm enjoying myself, as opposed to like, yo, I'm gonna operate with malicious intentions, because it's almost like now envy is starting to show, and that's not Ma'atic flow. You feel me? So yeah, y'all, that's pretty much it for this moment. But I want to invite y'all once again, pull up to the detox. Of course, I don't think I've announced it on here yet, but I got a retreat coming up in Belize in April. So if you're interested, please swing me a message, maybe comment on one of these things. But you can find me, just like I tell everybody, I'm not hard to find. Rootsgod on every platform. I'm the only authentic one. I mean, there's some other pages, but I don't know. They're like ghost pages. So just find me, just hit me up, Rootsgod on all platforms. I think in this, it's really talking about detoxing from this idea of malicious speech and feeling like we have to not honor commitment. So operating out of a place of distrust as well. So I think the thing that I really want to emphasize is, once again, that when we're talking about detoxing, it's not just about the food, y'all. It's about these qualities, and even the ego detox, when we talk about humility, when we talk about operating more out of balance, as opposed to feeling like, oh, I got to be more humble than, more confident, or more confident than humble. And yes, we should always be confident. Confidence is probably not the best word, right? Like, we should be confident in our ability to act with humility when it is necessary, right? So I want to definitely make that distinction. And detoxing is not about perfection. It's about refinement. How can we constantly identify and look at our lives so that we can be our most powerful, our most best self? And our most powerful self operates with love, compassion, balance, truth, justice, order, harmony, propriety, reciprocity, all of these ideals and principles of Ma'at, for us to really experience a life of Hetep, meaning peace. So, reverent speech is what creates and sustains harmony. One of the most honorable things we can do is make sure that we stick to our commitments. And one of the only ways to really create community, true community, is through compassion. Just repeat these affirmations after me. I and I speak with reverence. I and I honor commitment. I and I act with compassion and care.